Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
If you're going to talk about the mystical heart, you got to at least talk about one dating experience. So decades ago, I went to apply for a job. It was in the afternoon, and the manager and I got along well. So he said, well, do you want to hang around until the end of the day, and then we can go out to dinner? Sure. So we go to a restaurant, and he's like, oh, this looks good. Do you want to share it? I said, oh, that sounds wonderful. The waitress came to the table, and she said, oh, I'm sorry. We have a policy here that we don't allow people to have, if there's two people, you can't share a meal. Everyone has to order something. And his immediate response was, oh, okay, well, can we have this? And she started walking, and that's it. And she said, oh, okay. And she started walking away. And can you bring 2 plates? And she walked off. And I'm like, wait, what? Didn't we just do what? He goes, yeah. He didn't think twice about it. It was such a great lesson for me. Always say yes. Even when you don't really agree with what the person's saying, always say yes. And do you know where this rule, one of these rules is played out, is improv. How many of you have done improv? Look at that. Right. So in improv, when someone gives you a cue, you don't ever stop the energy by going, oh no, or like, nah, I'm not really resonating with that. You always reply, the immediate response in improv is yes. You go into agreement with whatever is being thrown at you, no matter how ridiculous, no matter, yes. Followed by, and. Yes, and, which is exactly what he did at dinner. Oh, yes, and can you bring us 2 plates? He got it, and she didn't, I don't even think she knew what hit her. She just walked up, wait. The and doesn't necessarily mean that we're always in agreement with what's being said. The and can then redirect. So the reason, and I'm guessing that most of you have already figured this out, the reason why we always say yes is because it keeps the energy going. It keeps the momentum moving forward. If you are in a divine flow, you just keep saying yes. The moment we say no, that stops the energy. There's nowhere to go with that. Now, I'm not saying I'm not an absolutist. I'm not saying there's not times for no. Absolutely, there's times for no. We're like, wait, it's all going a little bit, now we're all just like all over the place, just stop. You know, all improvs do have an ending. They don't just keep going and going and going. Oh, okay, I think we're done, no. The thing about the no, though, is to really look at the no as a pause and not as a stop. It's a pause before something else begins, and we might need that pause to recollect ourselves, do what we need to do, but then we want to go back out into the world with our yes. If we stay in no too long, that's how we get stuck. That becomes stuck energy. If I'm just no, and I'm in a pause, I'm no, and I just stay in that no new life can come in. Nothing can happen. The energy can't flow again. So we can even go back to that person and say, who we disagreed with, who might, whatever, go, yes, and, because now we know what our and is. We might not know what our and is. Sometimes we need that pause to figure out what's our and. But the idea is to keep that energy flowing. Don't you love that? There's just no resistance. It's a path of no resistance. Pausing, but no resistance. I had a couple friend who have now been married for like 25 years or something, and but at the very beginning, they had a very serious problem in their beginning of their relationship, and the woman said, look, this is not okay with me, I can't move forward like this, so we have to stop. And they stopped for a while until they figured it out and came back together, and she always called it a pause for the cause, which I love that. So it's not a stop, it's a pause for the cause of becoming more fully who we are meant to be on this earth, more fully our mystical heart. All of this was coming back to me because I listened to probably just this fabulous episode on, many of you know, because I talk about it, is the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. It's with Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, and Glennon's sister Amanda. And last week in episode 252, if you want to check it out, they had Martha Beck, who is she's a graduate of Harvard, a life coach, and came on the podcast to do a life coaching session with Amanda, one of the hostesses. So it was like a live session of what she would do in a coaching session. It was so good. But before I get to that, I really want to get clear on what this has to do with a mystical heart. So there's no way to have a mystical heart without a connection with the divine. Yeah? And it's not just a connection. So a mystical heart, as I wrote in our email, that I know you all read word for word, a mystical heart is when we are unified with the absolute. It is when our human self is unified with this infinite self. Whatever the languaging that works for you, is the relative and the absolute coming together as one. So that's what a mystic is. And the mystic heart is where our heart, that love, is all one. That can only happen if we have a connection with the divine. So the question to ask yourself first and foremost to have a mystical heart is, and I'm going to use the word God here today just because that's a general understanding, but I totally understand for many people that triggers an old idea of a God out in the sky. That's not the God we mean here. What we mean by God, spirit, divine essence, universe, the thing itself, I don't know, there's a million names, Brahma. It's in through and as all life. It's a oneness. It's not out there. It's in through and as everything. It contains everything. It's infinite. There's no place where it stops and something else begins, because then it would be finite. And therefore, because it's infinite, it's in every one of us. That this divine presence is not out there. It's right here. I mean, it is out there, but it's also primarily where we connect with it is right within inside of us. Okay, so we don't have to go anywhere to connect with God. And it's not a judgmental God. This is a God that, when I use the word God, I mean a purely, unconditionally loving presence. That no matter what, it always is love. It doesn't sometimes love. It doesn't withhold love. It doesn't use tests to get love. Always it is love. Always it creates from love, and it loves its creation always. That's what I mean when I use the word God. If you have another word, please just translate it in your head. So putting God first every day, that's the place we want to start with. To have a mystical heart is putting this divine presence, putting this thing itself that is transcendent, this transcendent essence of love, and putting that first every day in our life. So what that means then is not just doing, spiritual practices are great, but it's doing spiritual practices in love. So as an example, I get up when I wake up, I do a prayer every morning. And it's the same prayer that I sort of took an old prayer and just redid it that fit, and it was in alignment with my belief system. And I say it first thing in the morning. I've been doing this for years. It is so easy for me just to do it by rote. That is not loving God. That is doing a prayer by rote. So spiritual practices can become another obligation that I know originally I started it because I love this presence and I want to connect with it, but now I'm just doing it by rote. So what I do, because this happens to me way more than I would like, is I will move on in my day. I'm like, did I finish my prayer? Because what's happened is I started to say the prayer always with the intention to be very present with all the words, but somewhere halfway in between, I start thinking about something else. And I know I finished that prayer because I know it. So I'm sure I finished it, but I have no memory of saying it. I was not conscious and present. So what I will do is I will stop and I will go back to where I left off and do it again with as much consciousness as I can. And sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times to get through the whole prayer without going, start thinking about other things. That's automatic pilot is very powerful. So to stay present with our spiritual practices or things that you do every day, say, I started doing this because that's why when we're on Shunryu Suzuki, in the beginner's mind, is the power of the beginner's mind is everything's new. So everything you're doing it out of freshness and love and your heart's wide open. It's the routine where it gets hard. It's the routine every day. We have this daily routine. So it's this commitment that no matter how holy my routine was when I first started, it's to stay present to it as if it's a brand new practice that day. That's how we love God, this divine presence, with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. We can't do it if we're on automatic pilot. It is something that we're practicing doing because it's hard. Practicing being present with it as much as we can all day long. This is a presence, by the way, just in case we're not clear, this is a presence that has created from itself, from its love, trillions of galaxies, multi-dimensional universes. It's all happening all the time. And it's that powerhouse of love is right at the center of our being. And so when we go, well, that's nice that it's there, but first I have to get this done. First I have my very important project or my thing that I have to work out. Why wouldn't we connect with this power? I mean, do we understand how powerful this love is? It changes everything all of the time. There should hopefully be, when we start living this way, there should be these moments of awe every day, like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Oh, I can't, because you're allowing the power that created, again, trillions of galaxies, multi-dimensional universes, not in the past, but it's constantly ongoing right now, and all that power and all that energy is in the center of our being. The entire cosmos is in our essence, is in our being, and it loves all of itself. It doesn't love some parts of its creation more than other. It is pure love, and so all of us are included in that love, so we are being passionately loved with that same energy that created and creates moment by moment these trillions of galaxies, that is loving us. So it is always passionately, not just this passive quiet love, this incredibly all-powerful unconditional love pouring itself into our heart and our body and our soul all of the time. It would be nice if we returned the favor. Can we love it with all our heart, body, mind, and soul? Because what a connection that is. That's the mystic heart. What a connection. When we turn around and love this source with all our heart, body, mind, and soul. I wanted to give an example. So for those of you who don't know, I have many different teachers, as everyone here does. And I feel like I need to say that because I have Yogananda as a teacher, Shunwa Suzuki's a teacher. But in recent years, I did not grow up in a traditional sort of dogmatic, what I would call, sorry. That's not judgmental, just very firm ideas of believing something, Christian religion. So I've just sort of been exploring it in the last few years because I'm curious about it, mostly because I've been introduced to some monks who express love in an extraordinary way. But here's the thing. They have beliefs that I don't think would make any of us feel comfortable. So this monk I'm about to read, his name is Porphyus. He was an elder Porphyus. He recently became a saint. This is in the Orthodox faith. But he believes things that we don't believe. He was passionate about the church. He was passionate about all the dogma of the church. He was passionate about being obedient to the authorities of the church. He was passionate about the sacraments. Like, he was very, very traditional and did not go against the grain at all. He was not a free thinker in that way. And so I don't agree with a lot of some of their beliefs. So why would I find him inspiring? Because even with that, the thing that he knew, and he caught on to this as a child, was that to love God with everything of your being is the thing that really mattered. And so it was love that has taken him on this path, even what I would consider in a very rigid structure. And so I was reading this page, and I thought, wow, for us, this might seem very normal. But I thought, what got him to this place was not his teaching, was not what I don't think the structures of the church were saying, but he came to discover on his own. And I found it somewhat miraculous. This is the power of love. This is the power of cosmic love. He says, and you're not going to find it extraordinary. I'm just talking about, given his context, it's extraordinary. So often, neither labor nor prostrations, nor crossing ourselves, attract God's grace. The most important thing is to go beyond the formal aspects and go to the heart of the matter. Whatever is done must be done with love. Love always understands the needs. Whatever is done under coercion also causes the soul to react with rejection. Love attracts the grace of God. When grace comes, then the gifts of the Holy Spirit come. The fruit of Spirit is love, of joy is peace. These are the things which a healthy soul in Christ should have. And this is the part I just love. He's Christian. With Christ, a person is filled with grace and so lives above evil. Evil does not exist for her. This is a traditional. There is only good, which is God. Evil cannot exist. While there is light, there cannot be darkness, nor can darkness encompass her because she has the light. Isn't that what we teach? Isn't that extraordinary? He didn't get that from a book or from his teachings. He got that from loving. We get the deepest and most profound wisdom. And so no matter what your path is all over this planet, when we love, we find each other. We find that deep and profound connection of oneness. So the mystic heart is first and last, Alpha and Omega, about love. So now, with that awareness, we go back to this podcast I was talking about. So Martha Beck is this therapist, and she was working with Amanda because Amanda was feeling stuck. There's, I guess, an issue. I don't listen to all the podcast episodes, but apparently there's times where she just gets really irritated with people who have a good time. That's just like, she had this resentment. They're just having fun. Like, the sense I got was she works really hard, and she feels very responsible for a lot of people, and people just chilling out and having fun would just start to irritate her. And so they were just being with her. And so Martha, this is so important. I love this so much, by the way, I just got to tell you, because they're discovering so many things. Just understanding things with abstract thought, which is how we tend to approach things, it doesn't go very deeply, because our abstract thought doesn't start until age 12. And so just saying, who here has heard of projection? Yeah, so almost everybody here has heard of the word projection. It's a common psychological term, been used for decades. And a projection, all that means is this person is upsetting me. So in this case, people who were sort of lazy and having a good time were upsetting her. But she has such an emotion around it. The idea is you're projecting your own stuff onto them. That really she's not mad at them, she's mad at herself because she doesn't get to do that. She's upset. So that's what a projection is. It's if you have an emotional, if someone is, it's not just irritation or your discernment, but you have an emotional, like, that's not good. It's projection. And so if you work with somebody, they help you bring back and own it. So what often will happen is, okay, well, I own that. I own that I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like, I don't give myself permission to have fun. Easy to do, right? Projection, you can actually work with projection pretty quickly. Oh, that's my stuff, I own it. But what they're finding is people aren't having really deep healings with that because it's still at the rational basis. So how many have heard of inner family systems? Oh, not too many people. Oh, okay. So it was started by Dick Schwartz, who was a therapist in the 80s. And what he discovered was that inside of all of us, inside of our hearts, one could even say, there are many different aspects of who we are. And so he started talking to these different aspects within us. What's interesting is the first time I heard about this was 15 years ago from a Zen teacher, Genpo Roshi, because he actually, this is what gets me so excited, the world of therapy and spirituality are merging. Of course, because therapy is dealing with our emotions and our heart. And what is love? Feelings and emotion. It's transcendent of all things. We're going to do the mind next week. I'm not dissing the mind. But the heart is like where the power is, where this incredible power is. The mind is there to serve this love. And so this heart has all these emotions, and our childlike selves were developed. Our linear mind doesn't start until about age 12. So we have all this energy and emotional energy that we're still carrying around. So the person, as she was working with Amanda, this decision that she couldn't have fun, she made as a little kid. This wasn't a grown-up decision. She felt that she had to be the responsible one in her family, and so that's still operating within her. So what Dick Schwartz did, and then you'll see, if you listen to the episode, We Can Do Hard Things podcast, episode 252, it's great because you actually get to experience a session. And it happens about 20 minutes in. First, so just you can skip forward if you want. She starts asking Amanda to connect with her general, the one who's always in control, but says, give it a name. Then what's your little girl that who's being controlled? And it was Amanda Panda, and so she's talking about with the two of them. And Amanda is a lawyer. And so it was hard for Amanda, who's very intellectual, like, okay, stop. You give me a lot of words. Let's get into the feeling of it. And I was thinking about this. This is how spirit works. Spirit works in symbology. That's all those dreams that you have and visions. They happen in symbols. They don't come and say, here's a nice sentence with a subject and an object, and here's what you need to do. It's not a linear thing. When spirit is speaking to us, it's speaking in symbols, which is the language of the nonlinear. It's, of us as children and even as adults when we embrace it. It's symbolic. It's emotional. It's feeling. In stories, that's why stories are so important. So as she's talking to Amanda, Amanda's got to start getting in touch with these parts of her. And then she said, Martha Beck said, normally I take a long time, but since we have 1 hour, I got to do it all. So she was coming at her pretty hard. And then started teasing apart these different aspects of her. Like she had another part of her that was a bouncer. And the bouncer was the one who was in charge of telling everybody to get out. They're having too much fun. And she's like, that's the part that nobody likes. She's, well, okay, what's that part of you that says nobody likes the bouncer? And Amanda couldn't come up with a name. You come up with names for all these things. And by the way, she invites you to do it with yourself. And Amanda's like, I don't have a name. It's just like, come on. So it was funny because the therapist the whole time is going, anytime she talked about that part of her, well, and come on. She kept repeating because there's a playfulness to this. What happens is when we start giving voices to all these different parts of ourselves, we're not just in our mind, I'm projecting and I'm supposed to feel this, which still keeps things very up in the head. Now I'm in my body. Often you find your body moving in different positions because now you're freeing some energy up. Now you are giving voice. One of the things Amanda says, boy, these are parts of myself I've never really accessed before. And it's not frightening, it's joyful. Even at the come on was kind of a funny little thing, but then she could turn and be so tender. Like to the bouncer. Martha Beck was saying, bouncer, I know the theory, the agreed upon belief among all these different parts of Amanda is that you're the bad guy. She goes, but I don't think you're a bad guy. I really appreciate what you do. I think it's really valuable. And so she has a conversation with the bouncer, the bad guy of us. Are you getting a sense of how this could lead to the mystic heart? Because now we're feeling all these different aspects. What's interesting about intrafamily, that's why I was surprised, intrafamily systems, I thought, well, maybe I'll get trained in this because I really love it. When I first heard it, again, I heard it from a Zen teacher first. We'll get to that in a minute. But the first time I looked, so I loved it, so I looked it up. Right now, the only way you can take, there's three tiers of training. The only way you can take it is by lottery. There are so many people who want to get trained in it because people are experiencing so much transformation by becoming friends with themselves, by falling in love with themselves. And so here's the mystical part. She never once says it's mystical. She never once says this is spiritual, but it's mystical and spiritual. She says, okay, Amanda, now who is that part that can recognize the bouncer and can recognize the come on, and who can recognize the general and recognize, who is that? And Amanda couldn't and Amanda has talked previously, she has a whole trouble with the God self, didn't go to the spiritual place at all in her head, but I could sense that's where Martha was kind of going. And she said, she goes, I get a sense that there's this deep compassion, love, that you feel when we start talking to all these different parts. She's like, yeah. I mean, you could just feel her heart opening up through this whole process. And she said, there's this self that is able to love all parts of you. This self is capable of loving the bouncer and come on. It's capable of loving the paradoxical energy inside of you. This self is the place where all of your little bits of self can surrender to and say, I give up knowing how to do this or control, and you go to this infinite self. And so she says to her, you should probably have some sort of way of connecting with that self, and we're talking about self with the big S, on a daily basis. She's telling her to do a spiritual practice. Nothing, it's never brought up. So the integration. Genpo Roshi picked up on it. Dick Schwartz, a therapist, said one of the most consistent thing over the thousands of people that he has seen since the 1980s is everyone has a self with a big S. And so that's become the centerpiece of the work, the healing work. The healing work happens. This divine presence, even as we say, this presence is infinite and loves trillions of galaxies. It loves all the galaxies. Well, it loves all the aspects of ourselves. And we so many times shut down parts of ourselves because we are so full of shame and embarrassment. And so to be able to connect within a playful way and a kind and tender way, our hearts start to open and open and open, and we're in that infinite yes because we don't have to be afraid anymore. That doesn't mean there aren't boundaries. When she was talking with the bouncer, she was very loving and very respectful to the bouncer, saying, I so appreciate what you do and you are so important, but here's some limitations. You can't just go around bouncing people. Let's try this. But she did it very gently. Let's try it. She's talking to the bouncer, but in a very gentle mode. So you're not beating yourself up for any part of you. This self is able to love every aspect of our being and to be conscious of it. That is the mystical heart. This heart that can be open to infinity. It can have boundaries, but boundaries that don't limit it. Just as we say yes and doesn't mean you're always in agreement. But that yes, you're not afraid to say yes. My heart can be wide open. And here's another way. Or maybe we can do this. We keep the energy open and wide because we are open and wide inside of us. It all starts within us. So whether you want to play with this or not, what I'm opening to is to let yourself have all these different parts of yourself. You have different voices all day long, but know yourself. And recognize, and at the end of the day, is there any parts of yourself that you've rejected? Doing a forgiveness practice at the end of every night is so powerful because that's an opportunity to say, just to be gentle with yourself, did I reject any part of myself today? Of course, we want to forgive other people, but the entire cosmos is inside of us. The more we do this inside of us, we're going to find the separation between inner and outer dissolving. That starts to go away when I do my inner work. What part of myself did I reject today? And what's interesting for me is sometimes I don't even notice it because I don't think I have. And but it's always often can be subtle. It's hiding away. So it's this wonderful dance of love, of becoming. So I was in this wonderful, I was just having the best time. I was just like, my heart was wide open. I love this whole idea, no resistance. Yes, going for it. Yes to every part of me and then the world. And then I was thinking about where I think is fresh in all of our mind, the Gaza Strip. That was a big leap, right? But it was so fun. Jack, oh, he's not here. Because I was just like so delighted. So just to give some background to this, I grew up in a family of people who loved history. I had to read 2 hours. I wasn't allowed to go out and play until I read 2 hours every day. This is in the summer. And it was always historical fiction because we were always going to battlefields. I have learned so much. I have forgotten more than I can ever remember. I don't remember any of it. But I remember going to these battlefields. People are always dying and horrible stories. How much it impacted me. When I went into labor, the first image that came, it was so much more painful than I thought. The first image that came to me was a Civil War soldier who had to, in one of the stories that I read as a kid, who they didn't have any anesthesia, so when they had to amputate his leg, cut his leg off, the only thing they could give him was a bullet to bite on. And I'm like, I only have a bullet to bite on. Like, that's the first thing. Like, that's so weird that was the first image that popped in my brain. And then, as I've mentioned before, I grew up in a family where we watched the world news every night. We watched the Vietnam War, the Cambodia, there's constant battles happening. If you're watching international news, there's always something happening. And the news has a lot of images. And I was a kid, and I was just seeing these images, and I would get devastated. This is terrible. I would go in my mind, wait, Jesus has lived on this, I didn't know who Buddha was at the time. Jesus has lived on this earth, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. We had some amazing people that have lived on this planet, and also some really smart people like the founding fathers. No one has been able to stop this horrible violence. And it upset me. So, of course, it continues, and what's happening in the Gaza Strip, just like that. So it's just this overwhelming, seeing it all the time. What can we do? And I've been listening to both sides. It's so complex, as we know. The more I listen, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, there's always something else I need to learn. But the question that keeps going, well, what would you do if you have people who are violently hurting and abusing your people, whatever side, I'm not going on sides, whatever, if you have someone who's violent and abusing you, how would you respond? And there is the history of, in the Holocaust, of 6 million Jews who died very passively. So I think the idea of passive resistance, and I'm not just speaking from the Jewish side, but in general, it's a scary thing. It's like saying, oh, you want to brutalize this cheek? Here, I'll give you another cheek to brutalize. And it's a pretty profound practice. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, I'm not sure that's a yes and. I'm not sure that's how to love. And so I don't know why. And it just popped in my mind. And I had to give this whole context because I'm totally embarrassed about my solution. I have come up with a solution after all these years. It just popped in my head, but it's totally ridiculous and it's totally silly. And it came from this beautiful place of my heart being wide open. But I just had to preface that I know that it's silly. So, if we want to love our enemies, which doesn't mean passive resistance, because there's always a question, would Gandhi have been as effective against Hitler? I mean, it worked with England, but because what he did, like I said, it was passive. Like, you can just hurt my other side. Then, I'm like, no, but love is active. Love is motion forward. Love is yes and. Yes, and what would that look like? And I'm saying it intellectually now, but I was feeling it. And I'm like, I know what we should do. It was definitely my little girl, by the way. I'm so embarrassed I keep talking. Okay, but it just delighted me to no end. So the United States gave Israel $14 billion of aid. I'm not quite sure what the aid was in, but I thought, what if we just took $1 billion of those $14 billion? I really don't want to say it. And we make a ton of hearts that say, we love you, we bless you, we want to heal with you, you're our family, we care about you, we love you, we love you, we love you. And you fill up these helicopters and you blanket the Gaza Strip with all these hearts pouring down with, kids everyone writing on them, and their ground troops pressing on hearts, and then they get them like, oh no, that's nothing. So blitz them again with hearts. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's great. No. Blitz them again with hearts. I'm like, let's just cover them with love, just like pouring the love. And it was just like such a fun idea. I'm like, well, I know it sounds crazy, but then I thought, then I got back into my adult mind. I'm like, okay, that's insane and very childish. And then I was thinking, if I was somebody who's my grandparent or my child had just been bombed and killed, wouldn't I find that response incredibly hurtful and disrespectful? Like, it would almost make me angry. Like, my child was murdered and you're going to drop pieces of paper or cloth with "I love you" on it? And I just suddenly felt, even just imagine this all in my head, like that anger coming back. And I totally get that. I totally understand that. But here's the thing that I remember. That's why I was talking about my history. I've read a lot of history. All this violence isn't working either. The answer isn't like, okay, well, to respect the fact that your child has been destroyed, the most loving, respectful thing I could do is go and destroy someone else's child. That's insane. So my idea isn't any more insane than that. And I get that it wouldn't resolve anything, but just in that moment, it was like this light showing through. Just even in thinking about it, my heart just opened and light came through. What happens when we do the yes and? That this mystical heart loves every part of us. It loves every part of the world. It is not picking sides. It is not saying, I love this side. This side is more deserving of my love than this side. All of it is loved, absolutely, fully, and unconditionally. What if we became the vehicles of that love, not with ourselves, as I was just talking about, we do the inner work, but in our life, when someone is really annoying us, rather we can do nonviolent communication, we can do all sorts of things, but what if we just we're just, because we're doing all our work, we're connecting with this divine love all the time, we're loving the universe that created trillions of galaxies, we're connected with this power, and we just come into our workplace or into our relationship and just blanket it with just love. Unrealistic, crazy love. This is the mystical heart. Even organized religion never knew what to do with the mystics. Because the mystics were like, okay, you have these rules, but when you get into the love of God, that all starts to dissolve. Mystics are hard to control. Mystics are going to be fully, completely in their heart, no matter where they are, no matter what the rules are. No one's going to tell them who they can and cannot love. Yeah? You with me? This is the mystic heart. This is who we all are becoming every day. These beautiful, radiant, mystic hearts. Let's pray. And so it's with such great joy so we feel into this energy of the mystic heart that is everywhere, where the center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere. This infinite oceanic love that is not only infinitely tender, but infinitely powerful and creative and joyful, full of life and vitality and energy. It is a force that we can see that is created beyond our wildest imagination, beyond what we can think of as human beings in this extraordinary cosmos, in these parallel universes, in the multi-dimensions, including and ever importantly, this beautiful radiant earth plane with all of its gorgeous plants and the water and the air. We feel the power and the love of the Spirit in all of its creations as all beings everywhere, sentient life forms, animals, birds, fish, and all human beings. Every aspect of creation is filled to overflowing with this mystical heart, with this mystical love that does not make sense to the rational mind. It just loves for no reason, and it's loving all of us right now. We are surrounded, every one of us in this moment, in unbelievable, unimaginable love that is giving itself to us right now. It is pouring itself into our mind, our heart, our body, and our soul. It is already fully alive and becoming more and more itself as each and every one of us. How grateful I am for these beautiful mystic hearts blooming into our greater yet to be, blooming into the beauty that we were always meant to be, and that we are now every time we let go and we say yes, we forgive and we say yes, we have a boundary and we say yes, we redirect and we say yes, we live in this infinite oceanic love that is limitless, that is free, and that is pure bliss. This is who we are. And we hold everyone, not only all our beings within ourselves, but all our friends, our family, the people that give us the hardest time. We open our heart, we open our heart, we open our heart in safety and in boundaries, because we know God is our source. God is our source. The I am, this big self, is our source, and it is doing the work. We continue to give ourselves to the divine, and the divine goes before us and makes the crooked places straight. The divine goes before us and makes the crooked places straight. And so for this beautiful Lighthouse community that loves this divine presence with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul, and lives this love in our everyday life, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. In deep abiding gratitude, we let this word be, as we say together, and so it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.